Hello there, friends. Today I'll be sharing an article with you from HBR Selections on mindfulness. Here is the book. And today's article will be sharing some research shared by a few authors about how mindfulness can literally change your brain, how that works. This article is written by three authors: Christina Congleton, Britta K. Hulzer, and Sarah W. Lazar. So, as always, let me share a little bit about these authors, and then we'll jump right into this article, which is a short article, but very research dense. There are so many studies that are referenced here, and I highly encourage anyone who is interested in this research about how mindfulness is actually changing your brain. Follow up on these articles, have a look. I'm sure you can find them online, or you can find them in the publications and learn a little bit about how these mechanisms really work. So in any case, authors first. Christina Congleton is a leadership and change consultant at Axon Leadership and has researched stress and the brain at Massachusetts General Hospital and the University of Denver. She holds a master's in human development and psychology from Harvard University. The second author, Britta K. Hulzer, conducts MRI research to investigate the neural mechanisms of mindfulness practice. Previously a research fellow at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School, she currently works at the Technical University Munich. She holds a doctorate in psychology from Gießen University in Germany. And lastly, Sarah W. Lazar is an associate researcher in the psychiatry department at Massachusetts General Hospital and an assistant professor in psychology at Harvard Medical School. The focus of her research is to elucidate the neural mechanisms underlying the beneficial effects of yoga and meditation, both in clinical settings and in healthy individuals. You have to keep in mind, this article was written some time back in 2015, so I imagine all these authors have many more accomplishments under their belt now. In any case, let me get started on the article, and as we go through and we come upon references, I will be sharing those studies with you as well. So with no further ado, let's learn about how mindfulness can literally change your brain. The business world is abuzz with mindfulness, but perhaps you haven't heard that the hype is backed by science. Recent research provides strong evidence that practicing non-judgmental present moment awareness, aka mindfulness, changes the brain, and it does so in ways that anyone working in today's complex business environment, and certainly every leader, should know about. And for this statement, they reference an article by S.N. Banu called How Meditation May Change the Brain. That one seems like an opinion piece because it is just in the New York Times, not a medical journal, but as we get through, we'll find a few others that are more interesting for us to follow up on. We contributed to this research in 2011 with a study on participants who completed an 8-week mindfulness program. And this was published by B.K. Hulzer and the other researchers. A study entitled Mindfulness Practice Leads to Increases in Regional Brain Gray Matter Density. This was published by Psychiatry Research 191. So the gray matter density was improved through this practice. In the years since, Neuroscience laboratories from around the world have also investigated ways in which meditation, one key way to practice mindfulness, changes the brain. This year, a team of scientists from the University of British Columbia and the Chemnitz University of Technology were able to pool data from more than 20 studies to determine which areas of the brain are consistently affected. And they published this work. K.C. Fox et al. Is the author. The title of that study was, "Is Meditation Associated with Altered Brain Structure? A Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis of Morphometric Neuroimaging in Meditation Practitioners." And this study was published by Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews. So, they wanted to determine which areas of the brain are consistently affected by mindfulness practice. They identified at least 8 different regions in the study that I just referenced by K.C. Fox et al. But here, in this brief article, we will focus on 2 that we believe to be of particular interest to business professionals. Remember, this article is targeted to business professionals. But if you were to follow up on that K.C. Fox et al. Article, you'll find that there are many aspects of your life that will be impacted through the practice of mindfulness. So, of the 2 that are important to business practitioners, the first is the anterior cingulate cortex. Anterior cingulate cortex, or as we will abbreviate it, ACC. A structure located deep inside the forehead, behind the brain's frontal lobe. The ACC is associated with self-regulation, meaning the ability to purposefully direct attention and behavior, and suppress inappropriate knee-jerk responses, and switch strategies flexibly. And in this, they reference an article by M. Posner et al., "The Anterior Cingulate Gyrus and the Mechanism of Self-Regulation." This was published by Cognitive, Affective, and Behavioral Neuroscience. Now, I had not been aware of this part of the brain, this anterior cingulate cortex, but it is interesting that mindfulness practice allows someone to affect physically this part of the brain in stopping knee-jerk responses. That is sort of the practice of mindfulness. You put that one layer in between an incident and your response to it. You give yourself that little window to react. But another thing that this kind of made me think of is I've heard of instances where somebody is involved in an accident. And in fact, I think I remember a story in which someone, I think it was a railway worker, or possibly it was a vehicular accident in which an iron rod was fired through this person's brain. It actually hit them in the front of their head and came out the back. And you would think that this would have killed him. Fortunately, this person survived. But he did damage his brain in the process. And when he had recovered from his other physical issues, one thing that was observed in this person's behavior was that they had zero impulse control. Zero impulse control. That was the main, even though they had retained other, seemingly, that was able to live a normal life in terms of brain damage, the impulse control, that behavior, seemingly non-existent after that injury. So it's quite interesting that mindfulness practice is something that's able to improve if we have impulse control as a problem with ourselves. People with damage to the ACC show impulsivity and unchecked aggression, and those with impaired connections between this and other brain regions perform poorly on tests of mental flexibility. They hold on to ineffective problem-solving strategies rather than adapting their behavior. And in this, they reference a study by O. Davinsky et al., a study entitled Contributions of Anterior Cingulate Cortex to Behavior, published by Brain. That's the name of that article. So these people have ineffective problem-solving strategies and they're unable to be flexible. Meditators, on the other hand, demonstrate superior performance on tests of self-regulation, resisting distractions and making correct answers more often than non-meditators. Again, one more reference, a study by P.A. van der Herk et al. Entitled Greater Efficiency in Attentional Processing Related to Mindfulness Meditation, published by Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology. They also show, that is, meditators, they also show more activity in the ACC than non-meditators. Again, this can be ascribed to another study. This one, published by B.K. Hölzel et al., Differential Engagement of Anterior Cingulate and Adjacent Medial Frontal Cortex in Adept Meditators and Non-Meditators. And this was published by Neuroscience Letters. A lot of references. There are a lot of studies that have gone into producing this article, even though it's very brief. So please do search them, follow up on these articles, and have a read yourself. In addition to self-regulation, the ACC is associated with learning from past experiences to support optimal decision making. And this is ascribed to an article called Optimal Decision Making and the Anterior Cingulate Cortex, written by S.W. Kennelly et al. And published in Nature Neuroscience. It's fascinating. I'd never even heard of this part of the brain until reading this article. There's a lot of research and studies associated with it. In any case, it is associated with learning from past experience and supporting optimal decision making. Scientists point out that the ACC may be particularly important in the face of uncertain and fast-changing conditions. So, that was the first portion, the ACC. Second brain region we want to highlight is the hippocampus. That's a name that we're surely much more familiar with. A region of the brain that showed increased amounts of gray matter of our 2011 mindfulness program participants. This seahorse-shaped area is buried deep inside the temple on each side of the brain and is part of the limbic system, a set of inner structures associated with emotion and memory. It is covered in receptors for the stress hormone cortisol, and studies have shown that it can be damaged by chronic stress, contributing to a harmful spiral in the body. So that stress-related study is written by B.S. McEwen and P.J. Giannaros, entitled Stress and Allostasis-Induced Brain Plasticity, published in Annual Review of Medicine. So, indeed, people with stress-related disorders like depression and PTSD tend to have a smaller hippocampus. That statement of stress-related disorders having a smaller hippocampus is written by Y.I. Scheleen, article entitled Neuroimaging Studies of Mood Disorder Effects on the Brain, published in Biological Psychiatry. And it is also buttressed with research by T.V. Gervitz et al. Magnetic Resonance Imaging Study of Hippocampal Volume in Chronic Combat-Related Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, published by Biological Psychiatry. Now, personally, I am not an expert in psychiatry or psychology, but I did not think of depression, what I often think of as depression, as being a stress-related disorder. But the authors do relate stress with depression. I suppose I personally just have never made that connection before. In any case, continuing with the article, all of this points to the importance of this brain area in resilience, another key skill in the current high-demand business world. These findings are just the beginning of the story. Neuroscientists have also shown that practicing mindfulness affects brain areas related to perception, body awareness, pain tolerance, emotional regulation, introspection, complex thinking, and sense of self. While more research is needed to document these changes over time and to understand underlying mechanisms, the converging evidence is compelling. Mindfulness should no longer be considered a nice to have for executives. It's a must have, a way to keep our brains healthy, to support self-regulation and effective decision-making capabilities, and to protect ourselves from toxic stress. It can be integrated into one's religious or spiritual life, or practice as a form of secular mental training. When we take a seat, take a breath, and commit to being mindful, particularly when we gather with others who are doing the same, we have the potential to be changed. Literally. I hope you enjoyed that article. Thank you.